there again, friends. Happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights Live show. I am joined by Chris and John. And today we're going to be talking about SEO competitive analysis basics. So last week, if you missed that episode, we talked about SEO keyword research basics. And so what we wanted to do this week was then talk about the competitive analysis basics. And competitive analysis in general is just one of those interesting things that I always find fascinating on how people approach it and why they do it. And so some people do it to, see what their perceived peers are doing so they can get ahead. Other people do it to see what their perceived peers are doing so that they can see if they're falling behind. And then other people do it just to check a box and then never do anything with the information at all. So we could probably spend the full 40 minutes talking about why you should do a competitive analysis. But specifically today, we're going to talk about SEO competitive analysis. And we're going to cover what it is. We're going to cover how to pull that information, how to get your competitors' keywords and topics, and then how to prioritize those things for your own content creation. So, Chris, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with this first. An important announcement. This is going to be our last weekly show on Facebook. We are essentially, trying to do less and less with Facebook as a channel. So if you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, go over to trustinsights.ai/YouTube. And follow us there. That and our LinkedIn channels will be the places where this show will be from now on. Just with everything going on with Facebook, it's time to reduce everyone's dependence on it. So now that we've gotten the administrative stuff out of the way, let me ask you this, Katie, and actually I'll ask you this to John first, since you do the majority of our sales. Who are our competitors?
Oh, yeah, that's a great, we always fall back on the big consulting companies. We just say that it's the Andersons or whatever of the world where you'd normally pay $500,000. We do the same thing, cheaper, faster, better. And then there are,
we will take $500,000.
Yeah, exactly. 400K special this week if you lock it in soon. But so that's really our niche. We have really gone along that route of we don't tell our customers that there's anybody who can do what we do because what we have is unique. It's on its own in the market. So yeah, in some ways though, I regret that because in other spaces, it's great if you have like 5 competitors that you're going to get spreadsheeted against that you can just, lay the landmines and let them get destroyed. So it has both its benefits and drawbacks when you go that route as far as targeting somebody way outside of your normal reach.
And Katie, what about you? Who are our competitors to you?
Well, it depends. What I've found through my own research is it depends on what our angle is for competition. So if we're talking about services competitors, then some of the consulting firms that John just mentioned make the most sense. But if we're talking about our organic search competitors, that's a little bit different because the keywords that we have decided we want to rank for are not necessarily the keywords and topics that's why I kept saying perceived peers, that our perceived peers are ranking for. And so when I took a look at this information, I found that our organic search and SEO competitors were different from who we thought we were competing against for services and audience. So we're looking at companies like Ventera and Pecan AI and Data Crunch Corp in terms of sharing the organic search space and trying to rank for the same keywords. That doesn't mean that they do the same things that we do, but they have decided that those are the keywords that they want. We've decided that those are the keywords that we want. So we're going to, duke it out.
So this is a really, really, really important part of competitive SEO. Before you open up a single tool or spreadsheet, you've got to figure out what you're competing for. And John and Katie have illustrated the 2 different schools of thought on competitive SEO. One is who's got the traffic, right? And that's going to be around specific terms and search engine rankings and stuff for those terms that you're duking it out for. So as Katie mentioned, something like other AI technology firms. We write a lot about data science and AI. And so in a certain SEO tool, we would be going, if we wanted the traffic for those terms specifically, we would be going after those terms. So, and that's what most people do when they think competitive SEO. They open a tool like SpyFu or SEMrush or whatever, say, here's my term, who am I competing with? And then you get your list, and it's off to the races. But the question that we should be asking is, where are our customers? Right? Who are our customers? Who's got our customers? Who could we take customers away from? And that more goes to the question I asked John, which is, who do we lose sales to? Right? Who do we compete with? Who has a competitive thing? Because when we think about it, it'll go back to last week's different categories of search. Right? There's branded search, which is people searching for us by name. There's competitive branded search, which is people searching for our competitors by name. Then there's unbranded, adjacent, and novel. Last week we looked a lot at unbranded. Competitive branded search is when people are searching for a competitor by name. So to John's example, if we wanted to rank well for things around management consulting, neither us nor our peer competitors are really getting any traction for that. And our peer competitors, especially because they're all software, a lot of them are software companies, they're not showing up for change management. So a big part of that first step is, okay, well, who are our competitors that we need to be looking at, and who's got the audience, and then what are the terms that attract that audience? And there's a big difference in those two strategies.
It is, and it's a lot more in depth than just opening up a SpyFu and just plugging in your company name and seeing, who do we compete with in the search space. And so it does take a lot more thoughtful planning. And this is something that we've seen with a lot of our clients is we struggle to answer the question as well. So it's not just them, but who are your competitors? Nobody really knows. And I think that, the digital marketing space has really changed what that means, so, back, before, believe it or not, there was a time before the internet. So back before a time, before there was internet, you would compete with people who had similar products and similar services, and that was it. There was really no other way to slice it. But now when you bring it to the internet and you have all those different channels, you have search and social and, email and all those things, it just changes the rules. And so you may have different competitors for each and every channel.
Exactly. So in search, to what Katie was saying, let's go ahead and look at one of the more popular tools out there for competitors. This is a tool called SpyFu. Again, if you have an SEO tool, SEMrush, Ahrefs, Moz, all of these tools essentially do more or less the same thing. The difference is going to be on data quality and UI, but functionally, if we're using a tool that you don't see, that you don't have, like, don't worry about it. The one that you're paying for probably does something very similar. So this is the search traffic perspective, what Katie had said initially, which is plug in your company's domain name and see who's the tool thinks you're competing with based on the amount of overlap you have with keywords. So here we have us in blue and this DataCrunch Corporation in red. Now, the big question to ask is this actually a competitor? So let's go to their website. They build software analytics and AI that changes the world. Join the family of educational institutions, SMBs find massive gains with the predictive insights.
So the first thing that I would do is I would go to the services at the very top. I would look at education, I would look at website, I would look at custom, because we do a fair amount of education. That's not one of the services that we lead with. And so then we need to make the decision of what are the things that we want to lead with. So they do analytics, data science-based technology. Those are terms that we use.
Mm-hmm. So I would say this is a good overlap for search terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's who our audience is. I don't think that's the audience. So one of the things that's interesting here is that we have a lot of overlap, and what this tool, like many of the competitive tools, does a really good job of saying, okay, you can look at just the words that are unique to you, just the words that are unique to a competitor, and then the things that you share, which is 45 out of 10,000. So even though it looks like there's a large overlap, there really isn't. There's not a ton of overlap here, which indicates that this is probably not super competitive. Now, to what John was saying, let's put in BCG, which is a Boston Consulting Group. Let me get them in here. And here we have now almost 20 times as much keyword volume, almost 400,000 keywords. When we look at, there's nothing that all three of these have in common, right? So now we've got we're starting to get a sense of, okay, this larger consulting firm may have the audience we want, companies that need help with things like change management consulting, but from a content perspective, there really is no overlap at all.
Yeah, and so I'm not missing anything, right? Like their Venn diagram game needs some work there. That's not how Venn diagrams work, as far as I know.
Now this is interesting. Now, when I take away Data Crunch, and now it's just us and the giant consulting firm, we actually have 128 terms that are shared, and we've still got our 2,000 over here, and then they've got their 300,000 over here. So at this point, this is now where we can start to say, okay, let's apply the same techniques that we were using last week in keyword basics to figure out what's going on. So let's start with these core. The core essentially means the overlap, the 128 terms that we share in common. I'm going to go ahead and just export this as a CSV file. And then I also want to look at what we don't have, right? So everything I'm going to take, because we know we from last week, we know what we do have. Let's take a look at this what they call the missing keywords. These are the ones that are exclusive to them. I'm going to export those as well. And as we did last week, I'm going to go into Tableau. And again, you can use Microsoft Excel. You can use R if you want to get fancy. You can use Alteryx, any of the data processing tools that we all know and love. You can use to get this data. Let's go ahead and pull up the core keywords. This is the 128 that overlap. And let's use our keyword. And we're going to do our search volume, right? And we're going to look at our keyword difficulty. And let's put this on a scatter plot. As we did last week, we're going to take the search volume and let's make it logarithmic so that it's a little easier to see. And let's fit this to the entire view. Let's put our keywords as little hover points so we can see what we've got here. And we're going to reverse our ranking difficulty because, again, the closer to 0 a number is, the easier it is to rank for because there's more opportunity. So let's put also a couple of reference lines on here. So for our search, we don't need it for this point. So if you just imagine a 2x2 matrix here, stuff that has high volume and low difficulties in this quadrant is largely absent, right? It's pretty barren up here. There's not a whole lot. Stuff that is low difficulty and low volume, like consulting newsletter, that's the voice of the customer consulting. These are things that there's some opportunity there, but not a ton. Where things get challenging is high difficulty and high volume, outside the box thinking. Change management framework, digital customer journey. So from an opportunity perspective here, we have to figure out how to create other related content around these terms because there isn't an easy opportunity. There's not something here that we could do really well protecting ourselves with. Okay. Let's see if the other, still working on generating 400,000 keywords.
Yeah, and I'm taking it all in because I feel like you can start to see like the wheels spinning, the smoke coming out. I'm like, oh man, I definitely have been looking at our competitors, the wrong competitors. And so it's interesting. I feel like when I have this aha moment on our own show, I would be interested to hear, when people have that aha moment for themselves after they've watched the live stream. But like to me, I'm like, oh damn, okay, we've been doing it wrong. So how do we do better? And so this is how we do better.
Right. So now let's that other file finally finished downloading. This might crash Tableau because 400,000 keywords is a lot to deal with. But we're going to repeat the exact same process. Now this is just the keywords that BCG does well for, that we're not ranking for at all. So there's no chance for us right now.
And if
with
you
our
look
current,
at that, if you look at the list really quick, and so you mentioned that it's, 400,000 or something, some crazy number, like there's a lot on there that if you were just trying to clean up the list before you started doing this analysis, you could probably get rid of a lot of them. Like we're not going to try to rank for the and rocket and things that are
Pepe
like,
is not on the list.
yeah, Boston Tea Party. Those are things that we will never care about in terms of terms we want to rank for with the business.
right. Okay, let's do a little bit of filtering here to see if we can clean up at least some of this stuff. Knock out the things that have no search volume at all. And let's go back to our plot. All right, ranking difficulty. Yep. So this needs to be an average because there's duplicates in the list. And we should do that here as well. Okay, we're going to rescale our search volume to logarithmic. And we're going to alter our ranking difficulty, reverse it. So even in this gigantic, huge 300,000 data point mess, you can still tell that upper right-hand quadrant is still largely empty, right? There's not a lot in there, which indicates that this keyword list for this site is very mature, right? There's anything that you can rank for, you are ranking for. There's not a ton of hidden gems in here. There's still a few here and there, like seamless customer service, for example, the sharing economy, which is interesting. Commodities trading, steps for buying a car, management consultants. That one's interesting. That has such low difficulty, even though there's there's 1,000 or so searches. Let's do a little bit of filtering too on the average search volume. Let's increase this to 10. So at least it got to have at least 10 searches. We can clean up the left-hand side of the graph a bit more. So in something like this, this is everything that BCG ranks for. It would be impossible to try and build a content plan from 193,000 different keywords. That's what we have left in here. So the next question that we would want to ask is there a way, and the answer is yes, is there a way to filter this down to essentially terms that are at least relevant to what we do, things around marketing and data, stuff like that. And for all of these tools, there absolutely are ways to do that. Let's build ourselves a quick keyword filter here. And we're going to wildcard contains market, just that. And now we've got a lot more visibility into what here. Like you have marketing in the digital age, bringing the supermarket to the apocalypse. That's interesting. Marketing
and that's
consultants.
why I feel like there's a decent amount of cleanup that can probably be done.
Exactly, market share, synonym, things like that. So there's definitely some cleaning that can be done here, as you said. But there are. It's a little bit easier to see some of the things that you might want to work on. Let's take a look. Let's do the same thing. Let's do data. And now you see a lot of job related things, but yeah, there's Snowflake, there's first party data. So first party data is relatively difficult, but there's some decent search volume for it. Up here, you've got data analytics, salary surveys and things. So one thing that would be very interesting to do is, like, if you wanted to create a piece of competitive content, would be to do a salary survey and publish it as pillar content on the blog, sort of rounding up what the world out there seems to think would be appropriate surveys for data engineers, for marketing analytics specialists and stuff. It's a possibility. You do have other stuff in here too. Zero-party data, which is something we were just talking about. Gosh, I think it was about a month ago, about difference between zero and first-party data. So there are still some decent number of topics. If we go in, let's do one more on change and see if we can see what we got on change management. Change management consultant salaries, change management consulting salary, behavior change consulting, change versus transformation. That actually sounds like a good topic. Why is change so hard? What's interesting about this, and what's important about this, is that, again, from the analysis we were doing, these are all the terms that we don't show up for at all. We're not in the game on any of these terms. So these would be opportunities for us to go and dig in and say, okay, can we create content for these things, knowing that BCG's audience is the right audience for us. We know that. The same would be true if we were to go back to here. Let's put in McKinsey, right?
So when I, it's interesting, as someone who would be creating some of this content, and maybe this is where I just need to do some, I guess, for lack of a better term, I'll call it experimental writing, writing basically to see sort of like what comes out. Because right now, when I'm thinking about some of these terms, I'm like, but how does that relate to the services that we do? Because isn't the whole point to create content to educate people around the types of things that we have capabilities for? So I'm looking at some of these terms, and even though they are opportunities, are they still the right terms for us? I don't know. So you're talking about the salary surveys. Yeah, that would be an interesting thing that would drive people to our website. But does it have anything to do with the services that we offer? You could maybe draw like a dotted line to our data analysis and surveying skills, but is that why people are looking into that piece of content? So that's where I kind of get stuck when we do exercises like this.
Think about it in terms of the marketing operations funnel, right? So when you're talking about content to attract people to us for our products and services, that really is middle of the funnel content, right? If you are looking for Google Analytics consulting help, you have unbranded intent that's saying like I have a problem, I need help with this problem. Who does this, right? Bottom of the funnel content would be the branded stuff. Like I need Trust Insights to come help us with this thing. I need Katie Robert to come in and shout at all the idiots I have working for me. That's
happily
where all this stuff comes into play, is at the top of the funnel, where we know you don't have buying intent, right? Otherwise you would have shown up in those middle of funnel terms. We know for sure that you have no buying intent, but you're the right audience. And if we can attract your attention and enroll you in something just like the newsletter, and just as a way to hold on to your attention for just a little bit longer with each issue, then, like we talked about a few episodes ago, when that spotlight of purchasing briefly sweeps across your brand, right? For the 2 seconds you're in the spotlight, people will go, I get the Trust Insights newsletter every week, and hey, we've got a marketing analytics problem. Let me go give them a call, right? So this is very much, when we talked about sort of the 3-year marketing strategy, you have brand building at the top, you have publishing in the middle, and you have community at the bottom. And we have publishing with the Trust Insights newsletter and this show and stuff like that. We have that nailed down, right? We're pretty good at that. We have the bottom of the funnel community, a Slack group, analytics for marketers. We have that pretty well in hand. You have 2,000 people in that group. Where we don't have as much is in the top of the funnel, right? In that, do people even know who we are? And we have talked in the past about things like, well, hey, we have to go to a lot of conferences and events and be speaking just to get in front of crowds. And we've discussed, this conference is a better crowd than this conference. But one of the interesting aspects about doing this kind of competitive SEO analysis is to say, yeah, there's a lot of stuff where let's take a look at this intersection here. There's 177,000 keywords that McKinsey and BCG share, right? Again, not all of these are going to be relevant, but some of them, like artificial intelligence and things, or quantum computing, or even just basic digital marketing, or Schumpeter's creative destruction, are things that this audience, which we know is a valuable audience, wants more of. Can we get any slice of that pie?
As usual, Chris, you always give me a lot to think about. And now I'm just trying to figure out how to delegate this to John instead of me. And I just haven't quite figured that piece out yet. Because it wouldn't be a live stream without giving John a big to-do list. But
Gotta have
apparently
something on the list.
right, I'm the one who gets the to-do list this time.
To that point, if you think about it, if you were to let's clear everything out here. Let's put marketing over coffee in here.
Here we go, John.
John's podcast.
We'll definitely find work that needs to be done here.
So there's these other things that currently have some overlap, but are these the people that have an audience that we want as podcasters, right? As people who have, I would argue that probably not. Probably, if we want to attract people to our podcast, we want people who are interested in marketing in general, right? So we would probably want more people who would go like, our friends and clients, full disclosure, marketing profs. They have a really good audience. We would look at people who go to places like martech.org, because again, a really good group of folks. And so the question there is, okay, well, what does that world look like? Where, what topics are those talking about that marketing over coffee is not? They have brand building, for example, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, inbound marketing. These are all terms that those two other sites do well for that marketing over coffee does not. So as we're trying to come up with show topics or things like that, these things we might want to talk about brand loyalty on the show. Like I'm pretty sure we've not done a whole lot with brand loyalty, or if we have not optimized those episodes for it.
Yeah, I've always stayed away from brand stuff. I kind of have this marketing ops bias of like, oh, the people that sit around and talk branding all day, like they don't really work. I don't want to have anything to do with those people. And obviously this is telling me that like, yeah, we're missing a huge opportunity. I need to give some glad handing to the brand term.
It's funny you say that, because I used to think that way a lot about brand, like it's just fluffy stuff. But ever since we started doing more and more with really advanced regression models, and seeing more brand stuff cropping up, going, you know what, there's a there. A lot of the folks who do brand stuff don't have access to those, regression models. But if they did, they would very clearly see, hey, this stuff is actually important. And here are the brand metrics that you need to pay attention to. We talk about from time to time things like Google Search Console, like just looking at branded search, like how much does your branded search go up? But there's a lot to unpack inside a brand.
I mean, I feel better knowing, John, that you have stuff to do now too.
I know. 4 episodes on branding. I'm actually psyched. That's a good one. I can definitely, more show topics is a wonderful thing.
But no, I mean, like, it's funny being so close to everything, like being in the company every day. This is the stuff that we just gloss over. But then when we do these shows, I feel like I can sit almost in the seat of an audience member and get a lot out of it, because you're always using Trust Insights as the example. And I feel like after every live stream, I'm like, man, like I feel like I've walked out of like a really good, event session where people are like energized, like I need to do all the things. And, so I always feel like that after these shows, and this one especially, because now I'm like, well, I have a lot more research that I have to do, and I have to, get up to speed on all of these competitors that I didn't realize were competitors, and what's the language that they're using, and how can I apply all of our tech, all of our like, processing techniques to learn more about what they're doing, and then how can I write the content that helps them compete. And so I find this exercise fascinating from that standpoint, where you would think that the person who owns the company wouldn't have their mind blown so much talking about what we do at the company, but without fail, every week. That's my little disclaimer.
It's good, because it's part of, if you're doing data-driven marketing properly and well, you should have a lot of discovery sessions, a lot of, oh, I didn't know this was a thing, or wow, I've been thinking about this entirely wrong, because we instinctively as people just don't do a great job of being able to think about data. It's just not in the cards for us. Here now we're looking at McKinsey versus BCG. So we're not in this fight. We have no horse in this race. 177,000 terms. I just looked at market, and something like marketing in the digital age, zero difficulty, right? It's on the radar, but not there, and yet it is. It gets a couple hundred searches a month. That's not zero, right? That's not insignificant. Market access analytics, answering specific question: who are Uber's relevant market and non-market stakeholders? So there's some interesting stuff in here. Let's look at data. See what these two giants are fighting over. Data science salary, data science interview. So that was an interesting one. We don't necessarily need to know McKinsey's, but it would be interesting to see, like, if we were to put up a blog post about how to interview an agency for data science capabilities, how to interview data science candidates. Again, these are things that not services we offer. Well, actually, we do.
See, but that's sort of where, like, you try to wrap your head around tying it back directly to Trust Insights. But Chris, I think to your point, it doesn't need to be that direct line from here's the things we can talk about to here's the things that we can do, because right now our goal is to just attract more traffic to the website with content that is topically relevant to what the company Trust Insights is. And that's something that I'm still wrapping my head around in terms of, like, which of these things make sense. You could make an argument that they all do.
Exactly. I would say one of the things that you might want to do if you're looking at this kind of data is bucket it. Put a top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Red, yellow, green, or whatever schema, and then you can start looking at these different search terms and say, okay, where does this fit in? Data strategy consulting, that's sort of middle, right? Like if you were searching for data strategy consulting, you have some level of intent there, as opposed to, say, marketing in the digital age. That's very much a top of the funnel. Hey, I'm exploratory, curious. There's not a need, right? There's not that implicit kind of need. So bucketing these things out would be a way to help classify and categorize. Like, yeah, these are the things that if you know your funnel reasonably well, you can map these terms to. And then if you want to kick it up a notch, you look at your funnel, because Katie, you do this every month with our marketing analytics. You look at the funnel and say, okay, here's where top of the funnel numbers are, here's where the middle of the funnel numbers are, here's where the bottom of the funnel numbers are. Mm-hmm. And we know the transition stages between them, 2% conversion rate here, 7% conversion rate here. You figure out which is the bucket that is leakiest, and then say, okay, how does that map to our search terms? Do we need more content in the middle of the funnel stage to bring people from one stage to another?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, because even just off the top of my head, I know for our funnel, there's a huge disconnect from people who, visit our website to people who actually raise their hand and say, I want to work with you. Once people raise their hand, our close rates are really great because they know what they need and they know that we're the ones who can help. But it's getting people to that stage of, okay, that was really interesting information that I read, and then I go away to, I know that I need your help. And that's the piece of the funnel. I guess it's sort of like that, like, top to middle piece that definitely needs the most work.
Yep. One other thing to think about is also when you look at the topics that have very high volume and have very high ranking difficulty, those are things you're not going to win on in SEO. Mm-hmm. Ain't going to happen, right? You're not going to beat McKinsey at being McKinsey. You're not going to beat McKinsey at big data analytics. But where this data becomes very helpful then is to say, okay, if I did a predictive analysis on big data analytics, I know I'm not going to win in search, but could I use that to inform the topics in my newsletter, right? For the audience I have managed to retain, just serve them up something like, oh, you guys know this too. It's not just McKinsey that knows this. Like, oh yeah, a lot of people know big data analytics. It's not that special. But if you can intercept the search volume and maybe publish a week or 2 or 3 weeks before the trend peaks, you're using essentially McKinsey's own competitive SEO data against them by anticipating the audience and beating them to the punch.
Mm-hmm. So really, I think the moral of the story is you can't just write whatever content you feel like and expect to get the audience from your competitors. You actually have to do a fair amount of planning and research and data analysis before you even get to the content writing phase, because you could, like me, admittedly, be thinking about the exact wrong competitors and going after the wrong kinds of keywords, and then sort of scratching your head going, why aren't we getting the results?
Mm-hmm. And if you, one of the things that people forget about a lot of these terms, when you look at the super high volume terms like change management, 17,000 searches a month, 95% keyword difficulty, right? Again, you're not ranking for change management anytime soon. But if you create a post using, like we talked about last week, answer the public, where you have much longer tail terms like, how do I implement change management in a small business? How do I implement change management in real estate? How do I implement change management in a travel company? You will check the box to a degree on the core term, but you can pick up a lot of extra traffic that is much lower in competition because it's not even on there, right? If you look here in what they're ranking for, none of these are long questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's simply not what they are ranking for right now. So you can use these big, audacious terms: organizational change management, 94% difficulty; organizational change, 95% difficulty. But splitting out to something that's your own spin on it, you can rank for those longer term questions. And we know, thanks to these lovely devices that live on our desks and our smartphones, that search queries are getting longer because people are asking in natural language. So what can we do to anticipate getting those terms, again, with predictive calendaring, so that we know when to have our content in market? The bigger the higher the keyword difficulty, the lower in the funnel that content should go, because the lower in the funnel is we have more control over it. It should be in things that are podcasts and things that are emails that go directly to the audience, that don't rely on Google as an intermediary. And you can and try and capture so that top and middle funnel on the super long tail stuff.
I got a lot of work to do, Chris. I mean, that's really, I mean, but that's a good thing, because it definitely speaks to, at least at Trust Insights, we try not to be stuck in our ways and like, this is the way we've always done it. It's daunting, but also exciting to have to rethink about the way that you're approaching stuff, because it means that you're paying attention to, the latest and greatest tools and techniques. Yes, you have to maybe redo some things, but hopefully, you can build upon what you've already done and not just completely start over. So I definitely have some ideas of what we can do with this information. And, when we get into our, planning for the company sessions, then this is the information that we'll be using to do that. But it's definitely, it's exciting. Because I feel like it's green space in the sense of we haven't done it yet. It's obviously not new to our competitors, but to us, it's like, well, I mean, we just kind of get to do whatever we want and write about it however we feel like it. So like, that's exciting to me.
It is exciting. And one of the things that I think is so important for us as a company is looking at those big bottom of the funnel terms like big data analytics, for example, and making sure it gets into publications, because I have lost track of the number of people who said to us, "Oh, I didn't know you did that." Right? Well, that's our fault, because we didn't tell you we did that too. So, but these topics give us a reminder to say, "Oh yeah, we do that too," and it can go in our publications, even if we never rank for it a day on Google. We don't have to. We know it's of interest, and we know that our audience has an interest in it. If our audience is, if we're getting the audience that we want. So from a prioritization perspective, so as we talked about, do that 2x2 grid. Your top of the funnel stuff is going to be your adjacent queries that competitors are ranking for. Your middle of the funnel is going to be those intent terms that the competitors rank for, and the bottom of the funnel is going to be either branded stuff or stuff that you're not going to be able to compete with in SEO, but you know you can reach your audience in other ways. So that's how you prioritize. So we've looked at what SEO competitive analysis is, and I think it's really important that we emphasize it's not, you're using SEO data, but it's not just for SEO. It is for any kind of marketing where you want to know what's inside your customer's head. We looked at how to extract the keywords and topics, and we just talked about how to prioritize them. So any final parting words?
John, you have a long to-do list now. Get started.
That's it. Yeah, let's get back to work. That's always the punchline with this show.
And just a friendly reminder for our viewers, this is our last show that we will be broadcasting live on Facebook. So if you're looking for us, you can find us on YouTube at trustinsights.ai/YouTube. That's our YouTube channel. And this show always goes out live over that channel, and you can always catch the replay there as well.
Exactly. And always find it on the blog over at trustinsights.ai. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and our weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.